Am I the bad person for telling my sister that she doesn't deserve our mother's attention and sympathy after finding out that her fiancé cheated on her? I have a younger sister, Bella, and we have had a tense relationship for the past 10 years. When I was 6 years old and she was 3, our father cheated on our mother, which shattered our family. My mother was working hard in medical school while trying to raise my sister and me, and my father was the kind of man who resented the fact that my mother had the audacity to find a way to continue her studies instead of dropping out and being just his wife. Instead of talking to my mother, he became passive-aggressive, tried to sabotage her, and eventually started his affair with my stepmother, Judy, something my mother discovered when she came home and found them in their bed. Bella and I were very young, so my mother decided not to tell us the truth, and Judy used that to win us over. I was always polite but distant, but Bella was young enough for it to work, and it wasn't long before she started calling Judy Mom, which really infuriated my mother, but Judy and my father loved it. I found out the truth when I was 10, and I became much colder and angrier every time I had to go to my father's house. My mother tried to take me to therapy, but Judy and my paternal grandmother didn't think it was necessary, so my father refused to consent, and my mother had to take it to court. When Bella was 13, she started pressuring me to do something for Judy on Mother's Day and to convince our mother to share the day with Judy since both were our mothers. I lost my temper and told her the truth. At first, she didn't believe me, but when Judy's brother confirmed it, she was angry for about a week. But then, she went back to being affectionate with Judy. In her words, "It was a long time ago. Cheating happens. You can't stop love." And everything worked out in the end. She frequently said those things to Mom and started a campaign to try to force our mother to forgive Dad and accept Judy. She even said Mom would be a bad mother if she hated our father and Judy more than she loved us. To her credit, my mother tried, but Judy was a mean, passive-aggressive witch, so my mother washed her hands of the whole situation. When it was time for Bella's high school graduation, she gave our mother an ultimatum. Either she sat next to Judy for the entire ceremony and paid for both her and her father's share of the dinner. Mom was going to pay for everyone else except them, or she wouldn't be invited to the graduation. Our mother didn't attend the graduation or the dinner. Judy posted a message about how some mothers are terrible for not putting their children first, which Bella liked and shared, and Mom took away the car she had gifted her. It was still in her name. Mom continued to pay for Bella's college tuition, but didn't cover her room and board as she had done for me, and Bella accused her of favoritism. After that, Bella and Mom became very distant, and it's been that way for years. During this time, Bella met, dated, and got engaged to Ethan. She sent an invitation to Mom, but I think it was just to get some money out of her. Unfortunately, the engagement ended because Ethan cheated on her, and Bella found out after going to the doctor and discovering she had contracted something from him. Bella reached out to Mom, but she only got a text that said, "I'm sorry for what you're going through." Bella was furious, but I told her that given how she had treated our mother and dismissed Dad and Judy's actions, she shouldn't expect much. Bella, my father, Judy, and some paternal relatives are calling me a bad person, but am I? The relationship between Bella and me has deteriorated even further since that moment. While I initially tried to stay neutral in the dispute between her and Mom, over the years, I have realized that her lack of empathy and blind loyalty to Judy and Dad have been the root causes of our estrangement. However, despite everything, a part of me still hopes that one day Bella will recognize the damage she has caused and the pain she has inflicted on our mother. Maybe when she experiences the weight of her own decisions and the consequences of her actions, she will be able to see reality with new eyes. The last time I spoke with Bella, she accused me of being a cold and resentful person, of not supporting her when she needed me most. But didn't she do the same to our mother? When I tried to make her see the parallel between her situation and Mom's, she simply ignored me and refused to continue the conversation. Now, I find myself at a crossroads. Should I keep trying to build bridges with her, or should I accept that our relationship is irreparably broken? Several months have passed since our last argument, and the distance between Bella and me has only grown. We haven't exchanged messages, calls, or even a quick greeting at family gatherings. It's as if an invisible barrier made of pride, resentment, and unhealed wounds has settled between us. However, despite the distance, I still feel her presence in my life. One afternoon, while checking my messages, I found an unexpected one. It was from our maternal aunt, Amelia. "We need to talk," the message said. My heart raced. It wasn't usual for Amelia to contact me directly, so her message could only mean one thing. Something had happened. When we met at her house, Amelia wasted no time getting to the point. "Your sister is going through a tough time," she said in a calm voice. I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, it was sad to know that Bela was struggling. Despite our fractured relationship, she was still my sister. But on the other hand, her pride and stubbornness were leading her down an increasingly difficult path. "Your mother is worried," Amelia continued. "And I think deep down Bela is too, even if she doesn't want to admit it." That night, after returning home, I couldn't stop thinking about what Amelia had said. We met at a cafe near her apartment. When I saw her, I noticed her expression had changed. She looked more tired, as if she was carrying too much weight on her shoulders. We sat at a secluded table, and she was the first to speak. "I know I've made mistakes," she said, lowering her gaze. "But I also know that you've never forgiven me for how I treated Mom." It was true. I had tried to let go of the resentment, but every time I remembered how. That was the big question, and I didn't have an immediate answer. However, the fact that she was willing to talk was already progress. Maybe, after so much time apart, this could be the first step toward rebuilding our relationship, though I didn't know if it could ever be what it once was. In the following days, Bela and I exchanged some messages. They weren't deep conversations, but at least there was some intention to communicate. However, the wounds were still there. When I arrived, Bela was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked at me with an unreadable expression, and for the first time in a long time, there was no reproach in her eyes. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. We sat in silence for a moment. Finally, she sighed. "I don't want this to be a failed attempt, but I also don't know how to move forward." "Maybe there's no exact formula," I replied, "but we can try step by step." Bela nodded, and then, in that moment of uncertainty, we remained silent, not knowing where this conversation would lead us. Time has only deepened the rift between Bela and me. Although we had exchanged some messages and conversations, everything still felt fragile, as if any wrong word could make everything collapse again. The tension between us had become a constant, a silent weight we carried in every interaction. One night, as I was checking my messages before bed, I saw a notification from Bela. It was a short, straightforward message. "Can we meet?" Despite my surprise, I agreed. You can't control her reaction, but you can control what you do with this opportunity. Silence enveloped us again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of reflection, of important decisions being made deep within her soul. The next day, Bela sent me a message. "I'm going to talk to her." I didn't respond immediately because I knew those words were only the beginning of something much bigger. Something that finally could lead us to a real reconciliation, or to a point of no return. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. Bela tried to contact Mom several times, but she didn't always get a response. Mom was reluctant, understandably hurt after years of rejection and betrayal. There were moments when Bela wanted to give up, and during those times, I struggled between encouraging her to keep trying or letting her face the consequences of her actions on her own. But something in her had changed. This time, she didn't give up easily. She kept trying with patience, with humility. And little by little, Mom began to soften. At first, she gave short responses to Bela's messages. Then came a brief phone call. Finally, after weeks of persistence, Mom agreed to see her. The meeting was tense. I stayed outside the cafe where they met, unable to walk away, but not wanting to interfere. From the window, I could see their expressions. Mom with a cautious look, Bela with nervousness and evident remorse in her posture. I didn't hear what they said, but when they walked out, I saw something in their faces that gave me hope. It wasn't a miracle. There was no immediate solution, but it was a beginning. That night, Bela called me. We talked for a long time, she told me. It wasn't easy, and I know one conversation isn't enough, but at least she listened to me. It was only the beginning, but it was an important step. I still didn't know what the future held for us, whether we would be able to rebuild everything that had been broken. But in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt there was a real chance to heal, to reconnect, to be a family again. The meeting between Bela and our mother was only the beginning of a long and complicated process. Despite her intention to make amends, Mom couldn't simply forget years of pain and rejection. Bela had to prove through her actions that her remorse was genuine, and that required time, patience, and humility. Weeks turned into months, and during that time, I saw how Bela truly changed. She started attending family gatherings more frequently, though at first, the tension in the air was palpable. Mom kept her emotional distance, and I also remained cautious. But Bela didn't give up. She helped Mom with small things when she could, looked for excuses to share moments with her, and most importantly, treated her with the respect and gratitude she had once denied her. There was a crucial moment in this reconciliation process. One afternoon, Bela unexpectedly went to visit Mom at her house. She didn't bring any excuses or pretexts. She just showed up with a sincerity she had long avoided. She sat in front of Mom and, with a trembling voice, asked for forgiveness. Not a superficial apology full of justifications, but a real one that came from the heart. "I've been a terrible daughter," she admitted. "I ignored your pain, belittled everything you did for us, and allowed people who didn't deserve your compassion to come between us. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I want you to know that I regret it, and I want to have my mother back." Mom looked at her in silence for a long time. Then she sighed, her eyes shining with restrained emotion. "It's not just about words, Bela," she responded calmly. "It's about proving it over time." And Bela proved it. She spent months rebuilding her relationship with Mom and with me. Though our wounds didn't disappear immediately, little by little, we began to heal together. Time allowed us to find new ways to connect, to understand each other, and to learn from the past without being stuck in it. The real change was reflected in an unexpected event, our cousin Clara's wedding. It was the first time in years that we attended an important celebration together as a family. At first, I worried about how we would handle the situation, but something surprising happened. Everything flowed naturally. Bela, Mom, and I shared a table, laughed together, and enjoyed the event as if we had never been apart. In that moment, I understood something fundamental. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is a conscious decision to let go of resentment so we can move forward. Despite everything that had happened, we were still family, and the love that bound us was stronger than the wounds of the past. Over time, even Dad and Judy faded into the background of our lives. Bela no longer defended them blindly or justified their actions. She had matured enough to see them objectively and to understand that they didn't deserve the devotion she had given them. Instead, she chose to focus on rebuilding the relationships that truly mattered. Now, as I look back, I see a story of pain, but also of healing. Bela and I will never be the children we were before all of this happened, but we have found a new way to be sisters. Our mother, though cautious, has opened her heart again, and together we have begun a new chapter in our lives. There are no guarantees in life, and I know there will still be challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I feel at peace. Our family is not perfect, but we have learned to value each other and to fight for what truly matters, love and understanding. And so, after years of pain and distance, we found our way back to each other.